The American Liver Foundation reported in August 2022 that more than 100 million people in the United States have some form of liver disease. And of those, only about 4.5 million have actually been diagnosed. But it is estimated that of those 100 million, that 80 to 100 million of the adults in the United States have fatty liver disease, and many do not even know they have it. Now, why am I sharing this statistic? Multiple reasons. Liver is extremely important, as you're going to find out, not only when it comes to being a metabolism lever, but when it comes to your general health and well-being. Let's start off with what actually does the liver do? Well, that would take hours and hours to go over because the liver actually has over 500 functions. When they say that it is the most overworked organ in the body, they're not kidding. I can't even imagine having 500 different jobs. It is considered to be the most important metabolic organ that we have. And your health of your liver will determine your overall health and vitality of your body. Now, because it plays such a major role in your overall function, it's been looked at for a couple different cultures as even tying into different emotions. For instance, the Greeks considered it to be the seat of emotion, sometimes even considering that's where the soul was. And Oriental medicine, they look at the emotion of anger and how it impacts the health of the liver. And they consider that problems with the liver are caused with our inability to deal with those emotions. The liver works hard, and emotion plays a role in it as well. Now, what are the functions of the liver? It functions on a vascular level, so having to do with what it does with circulation, an excretive level with its ability to excrete and move things through the system, and then a metabolic level. When it comes to the metabolism, which is going to be our primary focus in here, it is intricately involved when it comes to carbohydrate, fat, and protein metabolism. It's also highly involved with the ability to store vitamins and minerals. Many people are not aware of this. And then it also has a role when it comes to moving out bacteria, chemicals, different allergens, and then it secretes toxins out of the body for elimination through the stool. Now, it has a major role when it comes with that detoxification, but it cannot handle everything that's thrown at it. There is a limit. It has its point where it says enough is enough. And when that liver gets overwhelmed, toxins accumulate. The body does take those toxins and it stores them in fat. It's very brilliant in how it protects us from it because it recognizes, ooh, here's a toxin. I've got too much going on in life right now. I cannot deal with it. Let's store it in this piece of fat here to protect us from it. Now, that comes into play when we're working to actively adjust our body size and working on releasing weight. That liver plays a role because it is not only put these toxins into storage, but it's responsible for the removal of it when it comes out of storage and safely eliminating it from the system. So how do we do this? Well, when we look at the metabolism and ability that it has, we know that, like we said, it is a key metabolic organ, and it does govern the body's energy and metabolism. It does that by acting as a hub to connect various tissues. And that includes things like the skeletal muscle and our different fat tissue. But the liver also generates glucose, or a form of sugar, and ketones, which a lot of people are familiar. They've heard of like ketones when it comes to weight loss. And it helps with using both those, the glucose and the ketones, as a metabolic fuel for whenever someone's maybe practicing fasting or exercise. But it's something that the body falls back on and grabs when it needs the energy to continue with everyday function or to push itself to the limits. Now, we talked a little bit about that detoxification. And again, it is a primary organ for this. How does it do it? Well, in simple terms, bioproduction plays a huge role. It is critical for helping to eliminate those toxins and excess fat. Bioproduction also is part of what is involved with creating peristalsis in the colon so that the bowel can move these toxins out that hopefully are being grabbed by things like good fiber, and your enzymes are helping breaking things down. But the bile stimulates a lot of that peristalsis, or the muscular squeezing, like think about rolling a tube of toothpaste to cause the elimination happen. When we are moving these out, we don't want them to hang around. That's just it. They need to leave the system. And a sluggish colon, which can happen when the liver is overwhelmed, those, like it was saying, that those toxins can build up and cause other health issues, and may be tied into some people's why they're not been able to release weight. And then a little more in depth on that blood sugar regulation. Glucose is condensed into a glycogen or a fuel, and or sometimes converted into fatty acids or amino acids in the liver. That's glucose is, or glycogen is either used for energy, or things like those amino acids can then be metabolized to build energy or to create proteins, more sugars, or other molecules that help move the system, help it to fire. Because remember, it's got over 500 functions that are being driven by all this. So it's not just that thinking, oh, I need to be able to get up and walk across the room. There's so much more involved. It's sending that energy to the heart to continue to beat. It's sending the energy to the lungs to take that deep breath in. It's sending the energy for the actual muscular movement, and so much more. Now, hepatocytes are the main cell that's in the liver. In fact, it makes up about 80% of the liver's mass, and the liver is a very large organ. And even though any of those, let's just say all those hepatocytes are responsible for those metabolisms of the protein, carbohydrate, and fats that we talked about, and the detoxification. So it is a organ that is comprised primarily of this type of cell, and it is so intrinsically smart that it's able to perform all these different functions. So here's kind of the meat of what we're going to get to. How do you know that your liver might be struggling? With that statistic we saw at the beginning, with 80 to 100 million people in the United States dealing with liver disease or predecessor type issues, and or the majority of those people not even knowing it, how can you know if it needs support? First off, I'm going to tell you, supporting the liver is always a good plan. But here's some little things that might indicate to you that the body does need some help, that it's hanging out a help sign, a white flag, come rescue me. These are signs and things that you can notice and be aware of on a daily basis. A yellow coating on the tongue. There is a modality that looks at the tongue and the positioning of different colors, different structures, different textures, different imprints of the teeth or whatever, that tell us a lot of where the body is having issues. And yellow coating on the tongue, not just because you ate something that was dyed yellow, but because it's something there that doesn't come off, that is an indicator that the liver is having a little bit of challenge and needs some support. Digestion and constipation issues, that's another sign. Granted, there's multiple things that play into that, but the liver plays a major role in that. It is involved heavily with the ability to break down your food. It's involved heavily with the ability to move the bowel and keep the bowel moving, free flowing, so that we don't end up with toxins scattered all over our system. So if your bowel is not moving regularly, that begs the question, what is regular? Regular is going to be 2 to 3 times a day, assuming you're eating 2 to 3 good, well-balanced meals a day. It is not uncommon to see the bowel moving once every couple days, once a week, once every 2 or 3 weeks, and I've seen as extreme as once every 6 weeks. Another sign would be a weight loss plateau. You're doing really good, you're releasing the weight, and all of a sudden things slow down and you don't feel like you can get it to budge. Well, usually the reasoning when it comes down to a physical and, glandular endocrine system, is going to be the liver needs some support. The liver's gotten overwhelmed from those toxins that we're talking about, because it's also continuing to maintain your body's health. It's still running the show while you're working on this weight release, and while it's dealing with these toxins have been released, while it's dealing with this fat that's been broken down. And so it needs help, it needs support. And then usually once we do that, the weight loss kicks back in. A lot of us are familiar with the term jaundice, and we know that that ties to liver issues. So we're looking at yellow tints in the skin in general, the eyes, and also the fingernails. Irritability. Remember, we talked about how the Chinese practitioners teach that anger sits and is tied in with the liver. So if you have someone that is irritable on a regular basis without really provocation, maybe their liver is struggling and needs some support. Hormonal imbalance. One of the many things that the liver deals with is helping play the role in keeping our hormones balanced by excreting xenoestrogens and what we call the bad estrogen, which it's not really bad, it's just out of balance. All these types of things. And if the liver's overwhelmed, then our hormones tend to be out of balance as well. Another physical indicator that your hormones are out of balance is something called a cherry angioma, specifically on the torso. Think of it as a red mole. And in particular, not only on the torso, but in the reproductive areas. So over the uterus, over the chest or breast area. Those, and the more of them that there are a indicator that the liver's out of balance and asking for help. Another indicator may be unexplained weight gain. Because the liver's also so involved with dealing with stress and how we handle stress, when our cortisol levels rise because of whatever's going on in life, and we can get weight gain from that, but sometimes we have people all of a sudden start gaining weight and they just don't know what's going on because there's not really an indicator. Well, they don't always tie it back to maybe the underlying stress issues and how that's built up, because it's chronic and been going on for a while, that the liver starts being overwhelmed and it cannot handle all of its roles that it has to do. That can result in something we call as an unexplained weight gain, mainly because we don't understand why it's been happening because we didn't connect the dots. Another interesting indicator that our liver may need some support is when the palms of our hands, the lower part in particularly, turns red. This has to do with the dilation of the blood vessels. Remember, I was talking about how the vascular system gets tied in and impacted by the liver. Well, the Cliff Notes version is that gets challenged and it opens up and expands the dilation of those blood vessels in your hands, and they look red as a result. Keep in mind, the body makes no mistakes. So maybe all we're seeing is red palms, but it is helping to balance out and carry the load and spread the responsibility around the body to lessen the load of what's going on. So it becomes an indicator, here we're having to do this. Another thing is swollen abdomen, legs and ankles, or fluid retention in those areas. That can be a common sign in like 23% of the people that have undergoing liver issues. And what's happening is this happens when the liver cannot produce enough albumin, which is a protein that helps prevent the bloodstream leaking into the tissue. So it is another cry for help that the body needs that support. Chronic fatigue. Liver is extremely tied into our energy levels. That's why we're looking at this when it has to do with metabolism. And so many people, they're so tired, they just can't get the energy to exercise, much less, it takes energy to break down the fat. It's just not the exercise part. If it's the actual mechanical function of the body is it breaks down those fat. And if your body's too tired, it cannot do it. So one of the worst things we can do is push the body when it's this fatigued because all it's going to do is up those stress levels. And actually what people find is their weight goes up. Another key indicator in which I ask on a regular basis, anytime people are telling me they have sleep issues, is what time are you waking up? I will say that the majority, 90 to 95% of the time, in my experience, people tell me they're waking up between 1 and 3 a.m. on a consistent basis. When that's happening on a regular basis like that, that is an indicator the liver's overwhelmed, because that's the time when the liver's like, oh, okay, we're resting. I'm not having to deal with whatever's happening in life. I can play some catch up. Well, that catching up and the work it's doing wakes us up. But it is a clear indicator that something's going on there and that liver needs support. Now, it's not uncommon when we get in and start supporting the body's health and helping it address the liver, that maybe for a couple days, they continue to wake up between that 1 and 3 o'clock, or maybe they go ahead and wake up at that time period when they weren't, but it's very short-lived because, again, the body's going, ooh, now I can take care of cleaning house. And then finally, another, and keep in mind, there's more symptoms in this or indicators. These are the ones that I chose because these are ones that you can look at and be determine there at home, is if you look at the underside of your tongue, if you see dark blue bulging and branching veins under the tongue, that is another indicator that can possibly tie to liver challenges. It can also tie to heavy metal toxicity, but both the liver and the heavy metal toxicity show up there in that form. And if you think about how the body deals with toxins, it's really not surprising that it could indicate either or both of those challenges. So now that you've heard all this and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I've got so many of those signs. What in the world? I want to tell you, there's hope, and it's exciting because the liver is the only organ in the body that has the ability to regenerate itself completely. So much so that if 75% of your liver was removed, with 25% being left, that 25% could, given the ideal conditions and the nutrition, could regenerate a full-size liver in 8 to 15 days. And it can be functional as it regenerates. That's pretty amazing to me, and so exciting and so encouraging. So how do we get in and support the metabolic level of the liver? How do we love our liver and help it to deliver on these 500 different functions that are needed, and more specifically for this webinar, for the metabolism? Well, Soul has got some amazing products that help do this. And it was kind of amazing to me as I list them all out. These are some of the main ones and ones I reach for and consider and choose from as to what is the number one that, or a couple that I might want to use. Well, we are all familiar with our SolFit GP product, and it does support metabolism very well. And one of the reasons is the plants that we have in there that help support the liver. So the SolFit GP is, to me, a definite go-to. Another go-to is the Sol Vital. I use Sol Vital with virtually every client that I work with because the liver is such a main player in the health of our body. In fact, it's a major player in the health of our body. And I have seen amazing things happen with that liver to calm down, with the bowel to start to move forward. It just works amazing. The AC cream, taking a little dab of that and rubbing and applying that over the liver. I've seen that help soften the irritability and the shifting of the liver, helping the bowels to move. We've used it with morning sickness for some of our pregnant women because the liver, again, is involved. Your compass blends. As you work on the liver, the body will release some of those emotions. Now, the beauty of all our Soul products is that they all have adaptogens in them. So regardless, it's going to help navigate this in a much smoother transition than I've ever seen with any other formulas in my 44 years of working with in health and in the alternative health field. So, but those emotions still have to be released because there's something called cell memory. And as the body heals, these come out. We use things like that AC cream over the liver, and or one or any of those 4 compass blends are outstanding. And I just have people reach for the one that they're drawn to at the moment and apply it over there multiple times a day. Otherwise, listen to your body and it will direct you. Another blend that's excellent support for the liver is your SolFlex PI. It's got some plants in there that are very good for pain and inflammation. And if we think about the inflammation that can come when the liver gets overwhelmed in the system, it makes sense. Vertizymes, because as the fats and toxins are broken down, adding Vertizymes in particular in an empty stomach along with your meals helps lessen some of the load on the liver and helps it to address those toxins and break down the fat. Good vibrations, because how it helps with that bowel transition time, and the same with Fast Track. So Sol has got some amazing formulas in line to help support your metabolic lever when it comes to the liver. As with every Sol product and our mission, Sol designs everything to address the roots of the issue for long-term results. We're not looking for a short-term fix. We're looking to actually give the body nutrients that it needs to help heal it for the long run and truly change your health for the better. So regardless of what we have going on with the liver, what symptoms of those that you saw, you now understand more of the importance of the role that the liver plays and why, in my opinion, we should always be doing something to support our liver.